So the other day, my Nextdoor app started going off with all these notifications. So I open it up, me being nosy, and I'm looking through it, and like the FBI is a couple of miles away down the road, searching the woods and doing all this crazy stuff. You already know I was in that comment section. And I keep seeing this thing about like there was this group, they were tied to this border patrol guy being murdered. Some of them were staying here just a few miles down the road from me. And this is what led me down the rabbit hole of the Zizian group. And we're going to talk about it in today's video. Hello, subscribe, and welcome back to the sofa. There ain't nothing back there, but I'm right here. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel, and if you're not new to the channel, well, the name is still Paul. Okay, what we're going to do today is talk about a case, a cult, a situation. Y'all buckle up. First of all, let me say this. This is incredibly confusing and convoluted, okay? I can't get you there. So bear with me. What I have done is gone through, I've picked out the pieces to me that are the most, let's say, interesting and heartbreaking and mind-boggling. And the way we're going to do it is we'll be looking at some news clips, some photos. We're going to go through and kind of talk about like who's who and then who's who did what, okay? It's overlapping. It's crazy. And that's how this group was able to get away with this for as long as they did. So without further ado, let's try and review. So in today's video, we're going to be, again, a deep dive into the headline-making group known as the Zizians, okay? Tessa Stewart, our senior writer at Rolling Stone, describes them as a deeply invested in ideas advanced by the rationalist movement. Almost all of them have been recognized for their academic or even their intellectual achievements. Many are fiercely committed vegans, a number are trans or otherwise gender fluid, and at least 2 were reported missing by their families. So, all that being said, like I said before, if you didn't buckle up then, make sure you're buckled up now, because you are going to need it, and consider yourself warned. Y'all, this group makes what Chad and Lori had going on look like the backyard clubhouse meetings us Gen Xers enjoyed with our neighborhood friends. I'm just saying. Okay. So before we dive into the who is who of this case, let's look into a bit of the background information on their beliefs, on the rationalist thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with what is known as the rationalist movement, okay? So the rationalist movement community is very heavily concentrated in and around Berkeley, California, which includes both an online version and an in real life version. IRL, okay, if you're hip on that lingo, okay? So there's 2 different things going on here, right? Now, the city itself is located along the San Francisco Bay. Now, UC Berkeley is known as one of the most prestigious schools in the country, and it's also noted for its academic rigor. So the foundational view of rationalism considers reason as the primary source and test of knowledge. There are 3 different branches associated with this philosophy. Let's talk about this very quickly, because we'll need them later. So the first we're going to go over is the Center for Applied Rationality, CFAR for short. Now this one is dedicated to developing clear thinking for the sake of humanity's future. Now the next one we'll go over is called the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, MIRI. It's devoted to technical endeavor of creating artificial intelligence that would not destroy the world. Now the last one we'll go over is the Effective Altruist, EA. They are philanthropically minded folk, beliefs, whatever you want to call it, and they're focused on maximizing the value in charitable giving. So essentially to the rationalist, CFAR provided the grand thinking, MIRI the technical know-how, and EA the funding to save human beings from being eradicated by runaway machines, okay? So San Francisco Chronicle spoke to the parents of 2 people associated with the Zizians, and this is what they said. They were like, the group seems to be united by an array of core beliefs, including the belief that established rationalist groups have gone astray, and that trans women are blessed with intellectual gifts, and that ends justify the means. Now, also, remember how Lori and Chad, I'm just going to go back to another quote here, started their own little thing talking about the traditional belief systems and whatnot that were already in place they were beyond that. So they started their whole thing. This is what this reminds me of here. It's almost like this group here was taking this core belief system that was already in place and going and saying, oh, they don't know what they're doing anymore. Whatever, they've gone astray, whatever they wanted to say, we're going to take it over here. Okay. And that's where things seem to go off kilter. Okay. So according to an article in the New York Post, the Zizians are involved in esoteric practices like unihemispheric sleep. Okay. This is a practice that's not dissimilar to hypnosis, where the adherents are told to sleep with one eye open in a state of chronic exhaustion. And I was like, well, hold on. Okay. I might be prescribed to this and I just don't know it. Okay. But let me tell you what, at this point in life, I feel like I'm doing that on a daily basis, right? But it's not intentional. I can't believe I just said that. Anyways, let's keep going. Now we have this general idea of the idea of the philosophy, whatever, okay? Let's start breaking down what we know so far about the group member. Now this is our little who's who of Whoville, if you will. So let's start with the leader, the head Ziz with the Riz, Jack LaSota. Okay, remember this belief, let's talk very quickly about that again, of the two hemispheres of the brain. LaSota believed that humans have two minds, the left and right hemisphere. Each one could be good or evil, with separate values and even genders that often desire to kill each other. Now, according to posts on LaSota's blog, only a few people are double good, okay? So there's that. Now, Jack was born in Alaska. They studied computer science at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. They moved to the Bay Area in 2015 to be closer to the rationalist community, with plans of pursuing a career in the tech industry and the aim of earning to give, so basically donating the bulk of their salary toward the greater good, whatever that was for them. Now, LaSota leaned more toward the MIRI of the movement, those things that we just talked about a second ago. However, okay, the long hours demanded in the tech world made this for a very short stay. They're like, nope, sorry, gotta go. Now, LaSota started getting concerned about the cost of living and joined forces with another fellow rationalist, Gwen Danielson, to create the Rat Fleet. Now, this is like a flotilla that would serve as basically rent-free housing for their community, according to the Rolling Stone magazine that we referenced earlier. Now, LaSota also faked their death back in 2022, and this was done to avoid scrutiny. I'll put the little obituary up here online so you can see it, or on the screen or whatever so you can see it. This appeared in the Fairbanks Daily News Miner. LaSota was declared legally dead by their family in 2022, who allegedly believed that they fell into the San Francisco Bay off of a boat. However, nobody was ever found, and that obituary still went up. Okay, so there's that. And clearly, that didn't happen, right? So, let's go to the next person. Let's talk about Anna Solomon, the co-founder of CFAR. And this is what they said about LaSota. She was like, I was viscerally afraid of him in a way that I've never felt before. Now, Solomon contends that for someone young and naive, the two competing hemispheres theories, coupled with the effective altruism, is a pretty powerful setup for manipulation. And she goes on further to say there are a lot of young people who would have had okay lives except that they bumped into the network around LaSota. And that's so true that you see in these cults a lot of times where somebody's going along and their life was seemingly fine and then they run into the cult and obviously their life and other lives are destroyed. So let's go back to Gwen Danielson. Now the family feels like she's currently hiding out somewhere at this point. So Gwen's from Washington State and left behind a full academic scholarship to Rice University to become a part of the rationalist community. Danielson was the group's mouthpiece, but would become estranged from them sometime after 2020. Now, Danielson and LaSota worked together for years, detailing their journey of trying to build a cabal. Danielson purportedly died by unaliving per Wired. However, their father believes otherwise and had this to say. They said Gwen appears to be working construction jobs under a fake name while trying to stay off the grid, afraid of being hunted down by other members of the group. Let that sink in. Now, in 2019, the San Francisco Chronicle wrote the following about an early encounter with law enforcement, saying, quote, authorities are investigating a bizarre protest against a Berkeley nonprofit CFAR, where 4 people wearing black robes and Guy Fawkes masks were arrested for allegedly barricading off a wooded retreat where the nonprofit group was holding an event. The suspects were uncooperative, spoke incoherently, and Wood said investigators had to rely on fingerprints to identify identify them. Now, in looking through this, I would see that often, like there's a photo, and I have it put up here, where Jack's getting arrested, and Jack's like, and they're holding the face of like, they refuse to open their eyes and stuff like that while being booked. And, obviously they're not cooperative. I mean, look where we're at. Okay. So let's go to the next person. And this person is going to be Daniel Blank. Now, Daniel was raised in the Bay Area. Their mother and father, Nadia and Alexander Blank, described Daniel as kind, extraordinarily intelligent, scoring 20 points short and perfect on their SATs, and incapable of violence. He graduated a semester early with dual degrees in bioengineering and electrical engineering. That's wild to me. Those are insanely difficult degrees, right? Now, he did struggle making friends, they said, but seemed to thrive among the rationalist community. Now, he cut off ties with his parents back in 2022. Apparently, they got in an argument, and his father wasn't buying vegan food or something like that, and he got really mad, and his father's recounting the story. And he said the last correspondence we had was this text message that said, "Look what you have done." And Daniel had included this video of a slaughterhouse. And that was that. Now, here's the thing. Daniel still had his phone attached to the family plan, okay? So they were able to basically track him. And they learned that he was living in Vermont in some place. So at some point, the police meet with him, they do a welfare check or whatever, they find him. And basically, Daniel's like, I don't want to speak with my family. I'm good over here. Now, according to an article and interview with the parents in vtdigger.org, Blank's parents said that their son, Daniel, had mild autism and was nearly blind in one eye. And they were like, although he was socially awkward and struggled to fit in with his peers, the mother and father, they said that Daniel was kind and trusting of everyone, almost to a fault. And she knew that he wanted to do good in his life. Now, again, I'm not trying to discount whatever's going on here, but you see this, target, if you will, profile of how oftentimes these cults can go after people. So I was reading Daniel's story, and again, this is not to negate the bad and the good and all that type of stuff, but I was like, okay, yep, I can see how this would be somebody that they would target, right? And get in there and try and suck them in. And again, these are the countless lives that are destroyed when we look at these cults and the people that get involved in them. Let's continue on to the next person who was involved in them. Next, we're going to talk about Michelle Zajko, aka Jamie. So Michelle grew up in a very upscale neighborhood in the town of Chester Heights, Pennsylvania. Michelle was described as sharp and a creative student. Michelle wrote fantasy stories, became involved in the effective altruism while being an undergraduate at Cabrini University. Now, Michelle was instrumental in bringing an EA discussion group to campus. Michelle also received a master's degree in bioinformatics from Temple University and was an intern at NASA and at the Children's Hospital. Okay, I'm just like, this is insane to me. I mean, the accomplishments that the people in this group were doing. So, Michelle's name will come back up again, not in a good way, okay? Because it was her parents their lives were taken at their home. We'll hear more about that in just a little bit. For now, let's move on to the next person. That person's going to be Tessa Burns. Now, Tessa has several different aliases, it seems. Surrey, Silver and Ivory. Back in high school, they went by Eliza. So the names kind of interchange here. Now, very little is known about Tessa, even after 2 years in custody. So Tessa's identity kind of remains a point of question. Journalist Andy on X said back in February of this year, the 22nd, I can now confidently report that Surrey Deo is the alias of Tessa Burns, a 24-year-old female award-winning former child genius from Denver, Colorado. Now, Galen Metzger, this is Tessa's best friend from high school, told reporters that, being aware of Burns' estrangement with the family, all this stuff going on, that they decided to start searching for Tessa in a Discord server. And that's where he started learning, wait a second, Tessa joined this cult, they're a suspect and all this crazy stuff, and they're with the Zizians, this was so wild. So many people had the same story that when they learned of the things that the group allegedly did, but even just the basics of being tied up with this group, they were blown away. Now, next, let's go on to Maximilian Snyder. aka Audir. Now, Maximilian was engaged to Teresa Youngblood. We'll talk about her in a second. So, as a computer science student at Oxford University in 2021, he described himself as an ardent scholar and creator. He was passionate about science, technology. He was a National Merit Scholar, semi-finalist in 2019 while attending an elite independent school in Seattle. Also in 2023, they won an AI Alignment Awards research contest. Now, a former classmate told reporters that he earned a reputation for being argumentative, sometimes to the point of getting in trouble. They were usually philosophical or academic in nature, but never to the point of being violent. He was a diehard vegan to the point of shaming meat eaters. Now, again, these are just these same kind of themes that you see coming up with person after person in this group. Now, let's talk about Teresa, aka Milo Youngblood. So again, they were engaged to Maximilian, who we just talked about. They were a computer science and computer software engineering student at the University of Washington. Now, in early May of 2024, their parents contacted authorities to report Teresa missing. They told police that Teresa's behavior had become very different recently. Teresa had become deceptive with them, lying about where they were going, who she was with, all this kind of stuff, right? And they also expressed concern that Teresa had also broken off these friendships, including some that had been there since childhood. Now, the police report also stated that Teresa abruptly moved out of the house and cut off contact with us. Teresa packed all of her belongings from her bedroom into a duffel bag, including her passport and medical records, then left, the police report stated. Now, soon thereafter, May 11th, Teresa emails her mother talking about, bye, okay, we're good, I'm done, and all that. Now, on May 15th, they sent another one to say that she had moved in with a friend and changed phone numbers. Teresa, at that point, really said they would no longer be able to contact her. We are officially, we're good, we're done, we're out of here. Now, let's talk about Alexander Leatham, aka Somni. So, Leatham studied mathematics at UC Berkeley and UCLA. Leatham would later be among those charged in the death of the elderly landowner. Now, that whole incident involved, allegedly, of course, one of the members running a samurai sword through this poor little man, and he would shoot back at the attackers. Leatham would be wounded at least twice. And based on the testimony of doctors, he ruled that Leatham was essentially incapable of cooperating with the counsel in conduct of their defense and understanding the nature and purpose of the proceedings pending against them. So Leatham was basically committed to a mental hospital, okay? And this is up to 4 years, and they would only stand trial if the judge and facility determined that they'd return to fitness to be able to, handle the trial and whatnot. So we'll see about that. Now, let's talk about the next person, Felix Ophelia Balkholt. So they're a German national hailed as a mathematics whiz kid who won national awards for both math and computer science. Ophelia won a gold medal at a world-renowned high school coding contest. Ophelia earned a Bachelor of Mathematics degree at the University of Waterloo in 2019. Ophelia had a network of friends, most of them highly educated transgender women like her. A former roommate called her the glue of our friendship group, and two former college classmates referred to Ophelia as a passionate math student, fun and very positive. She was an enthusiastic member of several college groups, including the Computer Science Club and Pure Math Club. Now, she also apparently made sure to spend no more than 10% of her pre-tax income and considered herself an effective altruist. She would donate a sizable amount to charity. And once she posted something about donating $5,000 to the Against Malaria Foundation. Now, another friend, like we've heard in so many of the cases, or the people that we've talked about in their friend group or their former friend group or whatever you want to call it, they also detected a change around her in mid-2023. Now, the friend believes that this is when Ophelia was getting more and more involved with Zizians. Now, these changes included, these kind of secretive, lengthy, anxious phone calls, taking repeated weekend trips to places, and Ophelia wouldn't say where she was going. Now, by the end of 2023, she cut off contact with all these former friends and left them no idea where she had gone, no way to get up with her, where it just disappears. Now let's talk about Emma Burhanian, aka Amir. So Emma attended the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. That's an hour and a half from me, and went on to become a software engineer at Google. Emma was among the Guy Fawkes protesters that we talked about earlier, along with fellow Zizians Jack, Somni, and Gwen. Now the group separated. Gwen and Jack Jack went on to, go fake their deaths and do all that crazy stuff, Emma and Somni headed off to the Bay Area. Evan Ratliff, who is a writer for Wired, stated the two took up a precarious residence on a property in Vallejo, which was owned by an elderly man named Curtis Lynn. Remember, we talked about him a minute ago. Okay, so Lynn would buy RVs and shipping containers and stuff like this, and he would rent them real cheaply to tenants and whatnot. And he had this fenced off land, and it was apparently dotted with box trucks and decommissioned boats and piles of junk and stuff like this. It gave the impression of a salvage yard, Ethan writes. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, and again, it's a lot, okay? I know, right? But let's get to how did the Zizians find their way into the true crime streets? We've hinted on it a little bit already, and you might be like, it's so obvious. However, that being said, we're going to talk about the way that all of these other cults we've discussed here at the Sofa Squad get into the true crime world, and that is murder. Okay, so February 17th, 3 armed people were arrested in Maryland. USA Today indicated that group members are charged with violent offenses in multiple states at both state and federal level. Authorities have not yet indicated any cohesive motive. So there's all that, okay? So this kind of kicks things off, right? So we're going to begin with the facts that we do know about those currently in custody and the 2 members who were killed during the commissions of the crimes. So in January, the death of the Border Patrol agent David Maland seems to be the tragedy that really propelled the Zizians into true crime notoriety. Now, what I want to do is introduce a news clip. This is an early report of the tragedy. It provides a nice tribute to the public servant who died in the line of duty. So let's take a second and watch that.
Chris is the first Border Patrol agent to be murdered in over a decade. Chris was an incredible man and will be missed dearly.
On the floor of the Minnesota House today, the cousin of a fallen U.S. Border Patrol agent killed in Vermont spoke about her family's loss. The agent's been identified as David Chris Maland, who grew up around Fairmont in southern Minnesota. Our Eric Shulu is hearing from the agent's family and classmates. And also, Eric, you're following the investigation.
Lindsay, U.S. Border Patrol agent David Chris Maland was stationed on the Canadian border. The Minnesota native was an Air Force veteran who also served 15 years in federal law enforcement, including his time as a K-9 handler. Tonight, the investigation into the deadly shooting that took the agent's life continues. Minnesotan David Maland served as a U.S. Border Patrol agent in northern New England. Monday afternoon, the 44-year-old agent was fatally shot while on duty, conducting a traffic stop on Interstate 91 in Vermont near the Canadian border.
First, I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Agent Maland's family, friends, and colleagues.
Vermont Governor Phil Scott provided an update on the investigation.
The FBI is leading this investigation, and the Vermont State Police will continue to assist in any way they can. Information is still being collected.
According to the FBI, Agent Maland was involved in the traffic stop on the interstate. At some point, an exchange of gunfire occurred and he was struck. The Bureau says that one subject from the vehicle was killed. Another person was injured and hospitalized.
And now, if you would please join me in a moment of silence.
The Vermont State Senate took a moment to remember the fallen agent before session. Maland was born in Blue Earth, Minnesota, and his family shared a statement that reads in part, "He was a devoted agent who served with honor and bravery. He had a tremendous respect and pride for the work he did. He truly embodied service over self." Maland's family had been planning a wedding. His fiancée Roseanne wrote in part, "It is with a heavy heart that I announce the passing of my beloved, whose immense heart, extraordinary charisma, and unwavering integrity touched everyone who knew him." Maland graduated from Fairmont High School in 1999. Matt Mahoney, who had the locker right next to him, says Maland was always there to lend a hand to anyone in need. Meanwhile, the details of what led up to the traffic stop have yet to be shared as that investigation continues.
That's so sad. I mean, getting ready to start live, fiance, all stolen in a quick moment like that over nothing, right? Just absolutely no reason. Just it's heartbreaking. Now let's go back to a couple of people we've talked about before. So remember Teresa, Milo Youngblood? Okay, so Milo, Teresa, they are charged with 1 count of using a deadly weapon while assaulting a United States Border Patrol agent, and 1 count of using and discharging a firearm during and in relation to that assault. Now, Milo and their friend Ophelia, remember we talked about them, they were stopped by Agent Maland. Now, Milo apparently without warning fires a handgun toward one of the Border Patrol agents while outside the vehicle. Now, Ophelia tried to draw their firearm, but a Border Patrol agent fired his service weapon. So in this exchange of gunfire, this is when Maland and Ophelia sustained fatal injuries. Now, Milo was shot. They were taken to the hospital for medical care. And another person who knew them, a high school friend, I believe, reacted to this alleged connection to the shooting. And they were like, this isn't just shocking, it's beyond shocking. They're like, Teresa was kind and thoughtful. I mean, like, what happened kind of a thing. And I think so often with some of these cults that we see, people are scratching their heads like, how did this person that I knew arrive here? And then you see the senseless deaths around them. This poor guy and his family, there's absolutely no reason, I'm talking about Maland, the Border Patrol agent, that this should have ever happened. Now, Ophelia Felix Balkov, remember we talked about them. This is a German national, was working in New York as a quantitative trader. Okay, so when they were in Vermont, they didn't do a real good job of like blending in. Okay, so when they were there, the duo attracted attention in this small little Vermont town, right? They're walking around in black tactical gear. Milo's carrying a gun in a holster, and they had this like interaction, okay? So there was like a hotel clerk who saw them, was very suspicious. So they report them to the police. Now, police come out and they like rebuff this conversation with the cops or whatever, and they just leave for another hotel. Okay, they're like, you know what, whatever, it's gonna go on our way. They go further north, closer to Canada. Now, Ophelia was seen buying rolls of aluminum foil at, brace yourself, Walmart. Would it be a video if Walmart's not brought up into it? I don't think so. Now, searches later found foil wrapped cell phones at the scene of the shooting, along with guns, ammunition, tactical, computer gear, full face respirators, night vision goggles, ballistic helmets, shooting range targets, and a journal, of course. Now, as we previously mentioned, Ophelia sustained these fatal injuries during the shootout. So there's that. Now, let's travel back for a second to 2022. We're going to look at the New Year's Eve deaths of an elderly Pennsylvania couple, Richard and Rita Zajko. That name should be familiar because we talked about their kid earlier who's involved with this. So let's keep going. Now, an ABC News affiliate was on the scene in the immediate aftermath of authorities discovering bodies during a wellness check back in 2022 at the scene. So 3 Zizians were arrested in mid-February, and 2 are considered persons of interest in the murders. Now, what I want to do is want to look at another news clip where they're talking to like neighbors and stuff like that and getting their reactions about this insane news that happened there in their own little neck of the woods.
Quiet neighborhood in Delaware County has been turned upside down tonight. Investigators in Chester Heights have ruled 2 suspicious deaths as homicides. An elderly man and woman were found dead in their home on Monday afternoon during a welfare check. Action News reporter Jacqueline Lee live outside the Pennsylvania State Police Unit in media with an update on this case. Jacqueline, what are you learning about this?
Well, Gray, neighbors tell us they were shocked to learn that there was a double homicide that took place on their street. Many say they didn't know the couple super well, but they say no one had any issues. A gruesome discovery made by Pennsylvania State Police the day after New Year's is now labeled as a double homicide. Officials identified 72-year-old Richard Zajko and 69-year-old Rita Zajko as the married couple found dead inside their home in Chester Heights.
It's shocking. You know, it's something that you wouldn't imagine even happening here. And the fact that it did really just, especially having children, there's a lot of children in this neighborhood, makes it even scarier.
On Monday, police were called to a home on the unit block of Highland Drive for a welfare check around 5:15 in the afternoon. That's when officials discovered the couple. Authorities have not released details like how the couple was killed, worrying neighbors who want to know who did this and why.
We moved here not too long ago, and it was an area where we felt really safe, you know, for our daughter, and a great school district. So the crime is low. So to hear that this happened is definitely a surprise.
6ABC spoke with other neighbors who were too scared to speak on camera, but said the neighborhood has always been safe. They all said the husband, Rick, kept their yard pristine.
He was always outside cutting his grass or cleaning the leaves, or, they always had impeccable Christmas lights every single year. And they're, just would wave and give a smile.
Again, completely senseless. And you heard him talking about, oh, this is a good place to move the family, there's no crime, and then this happens? Can you imagine? Right? Absolutely brutal, and again, absolutely senseless. So remember earlier we talked about Michelle Zajko? Okay, well, Michelle faces state charges of trespassing, resisting, interfering with obstruction, carrying a handgun, alcohol, tobacco, firearm agents, ATF, are also pursuing federal charges over allegations of lying on the purchasing of paperwork for guns bought in 2024. Now, also, Michelle is a person of interest in the homicide of their parents, so there's that. Now, remember the leader, the head Ziz, Jack LaSota. Okay, so Jack faces Maryland charges of trespassing, obstruction, and possession of a handgun in a vehicle, and is also a person of interest in the death of the Zajko parents. Also, Daniel Blank, who we talked about earlier, faces state charges of trespassing, obstruction, hindering arrest. Now, he was at first named a suspect, but then was cleared of that in those Zajko murders. Okay, so there's that. Now let's jump over to another tragic event. Remember Curtis Lynn, who we've been talking about, the landlord who endured pure evil at the hands of these monsters? Okay, so let's talk about that situation for a minute. We're going to travel all the way back over to California, okay, where the problems between the landowner Curtis Lynn and the Zizians began back in 2022. Now we're going to look at another clip from a local news station. This is going to give us insight into both the victim and the incident. Now this is the incident that, again, another one of the Zizians would end up being killed in this first attack on Curtis Lynn in 2022. So let's watch this, then we'll talk about it.
You crime reporter Henry Lee live tonight outside the Vallejo Police Department with the latest on the attack that happened over the weekend. Henry.
Yeah, Mike, this elderly man still in the hospital after this deadly confrontation with squatters. Now, 2 alleged squatters have been booked for murder. Vallejo police tell me those 2 are legally liable for the death of their fellow squatter.
I already took for granted that he was dead. It's a miracle. With a sword sticking out through him.
Carl Lynn is counting his blessings. His 80-year-old father, Kurt, is in critical condition in the ICU after he was stabbed and impaled by a sword during a dispute with squatters.
Just happy he's alive, so. And he's going to be okay, but they slashed his eye also. He's going to probably lose his eye.
It happened at about 7:20 Sunday morning on this property the elderly man owns near 3rd and Lemon Streets in Vallejo. For years, he's been trying to evict a group of people who haven't been paying the rent.
A big part of this problem was this moratorium on rent, COVID. People took advantage of it.
It all came to a head on Sunday. During a confrontation, the 80-year-old was stabbed.
He had a samurai sword stuck through his back with about a foot of it sticking out in the front. His face cut up all over.
The truth is they jumped him.
But at some point, Patrick McMillan, who lives on the land, says the property owner opened fire with a gun.
After they attacked him, he got his gun out and shot 2 of them. Killed one of them, and the other one had 3 shots in the chest.
A 31-year-old was shot and killed. A 27-year-old was shot and wounded. 2 alleged squatters have been booked on suspicion of murder. Their names have not been released. Now, Kurt Lynn's friends and family are hoping the 80-year-old will recover.
Kurt will help anybody, no matter what. Even if they screw him, he'll help them again. He's just that kind of a guy.
Now, Solano County DA's office will determine whether to formally file murder charges against these 2 alleged squatters. Live in Vallejo, Henry Lee, KTVU.
All right, Henry, thanks.
Absolutely file the charges, my God. Poor guy, just trying to help out, right? And you heard that, trying to evict him and whatnot, and then the brutality of the attack. It really reminds me of the Manson group. Now, as you heard, Curtis miraculously survived that first brutal attack. Yes, he did lose his right eye. Now, he was set to testify against the assailants this spring. However, authorities believe that there is they don't believe there was a second attack, and this was meant to silence him once and for all. So now let's talk about the people who are linked to and involved with that. So remember, we talked about Maximilian. Okay, so they were arrested for killing the 82-year-old Curtis Lind. Remember, he was stabbed, throat slit in the street right outside of his home in California. So now on the event of the brutality of it, they were talking to some witnesses, a guy named Joseph and another one named Juan. They each worked at like different body shops near where Lind's home was. So they were talking about how this kind of like all started piling up and like, you know, the events led to one another. So they were like, yeah, this person that was like really suspicious, they were dressed in all black, remember the tactical gear thing? They had long hair and they were like looking into the car and home. And this was like back in December, okay? So then fast forward, right? And one of the dudes sees the same individual walk up to Lind and wrap his arm, or their arm, whoever it was, around the neck. And at first it was like, this looked like some kind of like a friendly greeting type thing. But then all of a sudden they're using their other arm to pull out this long knife and just repeatedly start stabbing Lind in the chest. Now then the assailant returns to the scene a second time, walks up to Lind and slashes his throat. Okay, just a level of brutality that is insane. Now, remember who we talked about earlier? Emma Borhanian, aka Amir. Okay, so they were among the Zizians living on Curtis's property. Now, this is the person who was killed in the fight between the Zizians and Curtis back in 2022. Okay, so Suri Deo was accused of murdering Emma, so the fellow Zizian, and the attempted murder of Curtis Lind. This is in that 2022 attack. Now, according to prosecutors and as well as the little news clip we just watched, she helped to lure Lind outside. Then he's like hit over the head, knocked to the ground, and Suri and Emma, this is when they like allegedly stabbed Lind with the knives while Somni came up with that big, you know, sword and did all that. Now, during this, Lind draws his gun, opens fire, and he kills Emma and wounds Leatham. Now, on to that next person, Alexander Somni Leatham. They were also accused of murdering Emma and the attempted murder of Curtis. Now, just to be clear, as you heard in the little news thing, and also just as how it works or whatever, and this is in regard to being charged with their fellow Zizian, Emma's murder. Although Lind is the one who pulled the trigger, California allows prosecutors to essentially charge instigators of a conflict with murders that result from it, okay? So that's how we have these multiple charges coming from there. So what I'm going to do is round this out. My head is hurting. I don't know what to do, right? This was very confusing. It's very convoluted. You know, you have the multiple identities, multiple names. You have people moving all over the country. You have different relationships. You have this, that, and the other going on. But this state of confusion also helps people get away with this. You see this so often. Look at all the cults that we followed here. Look at how Lori and Chad kept things very confusing when people were looking for the kids, right? It's just how they seem to operate and how they need to operate while all this murder is going on around them. You know, listening to people talk, loved ones talk about these, you know, alleged, you know, perpetrators and whatnot, they all have the same story that we see so often of like, they were a nice person, they were this, they were that, you know, okay, maybe they were aggressive about the vegan thing, but my gosh, we never expected this out of them. It's wild to see the rabbit holes that people will go down and never come back out, and how deep it will go, and the innocent lives that are lost in the process. I mean, when you just heard it, you know, Curtis was doing something nice. Those parents didn't do anything. The Border Patrol agent was getting ready to get married. I mean, these are just senseless crimes, right? For what? For nothing. So, you know, when rounding it back out to here locally, you know, this is one of those things where, now granted, there was no murders or anything like that I know of, right? My understanding so far, what I've learned is they obviously, meaning the FBI, wasn't given much information, but that apparently some people associated with this group, now whether it was any of these in custody, I don't know, were living in a house. People said that they were doing weird stuff, dressed in these black outfits that they would wear, going in the woods, and apparently they were looking for something in the woods. So now again, that is next door app information right there, right? At the end of the day, I don't know, okay? But it's literally a couple of miles away from where I lived, and it's so weird because you hear people talk about that. Even the guy in the news was like, this doesn't happen here. Like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen like that. Now granted, there's been enough stuff in the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill area that I'm like, it kind of happens here, right? I mean, we got Michael Peterson, we've got the other Peterson dude, we've got you name it, right? Many things have happened here in this dangerous area. But nonetheless, it always is just a wake-up call when something this bizarre takes place. So, now if you're still watching, I greatly appreciate it. I know this was a confusing one. I know this was a long video. We'll get it figured out as we go along. Now, if you could, let me know what you think down in the comment section. And while you are in that comment section, you know what to do, okay? If you could drop some little sofas off for myself, Roscoe and Spirit, Bo and Luke, and well, the rest of the Sofa Squad, y'all come gather around. Good Lord, now. We need a place to sit and hang out and talk about the Zizians and the Loris, the Chads, all the stuff we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way on down to that comment section and do that, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.